Doesn't say
Why?
anything about a mayor or a councilman, just a city clerk.
You can't believe everything you read.
And then right next to it says disaster.
That's why you need a clerk.
Yeah?
Call the meeting to order. Do you have any citizen comments tonight of anything that's not included on the agenda? If not, I'd just like to welcome everyone here tonight. First item would be the consideration of approval of the agenda.
So move, Your Honor.
Second.
Moved and second to approve the agenda. Clerk will call the roll.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Next is consideration of approval of the minutes of the April 8th, 15th, and 22nd meetings. Any questions on the minutes?
So move.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Next is consideration of approval of the consent calendar. Any questions on anything on the consent calendar tonight?
So move, Your Honor.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Good. Next we have business of the mayor. Looks like I'm going to be pretty busy tonight here according to the agenda, huh?
Why'd you invite us down?
First of all, we have a proclamation for Poppy Day. Mary, do you want to, or Elsie, do you want to?
Hello.
Say
I'm
your
Mary.
names.
I'm Mary Muberry, and this is Elsie, and we're members of the American Legion Auxiliary. And May 24th is National Poppy Day, and we would like the council to proclaim May 24th as Poppy Day here in Charles City.
Any questions for Mary? I know, Keith, you were asking how long they've been doing this before.
Yes.
I still got some from last year. Does that count?
Jerry's got a garden going.
Okay. So how long did we decide you were here? Or you've done this before?
I've been a member for 18 years, and Elsie's been a member for 43.
Oh my.
We've been for a while.
Wow.
I will say that last year, with our donations for Thanksgiving and Christmas, we gave out $900 for gift cards to Floyd County veterans. So, you know, those dollars and that change all adds up.
That's a wonderful thing.
Wonderful.
Thank you for doing that.
You want to approve these separately or all together?
I'd so move.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the Poppy Day resolution proclamation. All in favor, or clerk call the roll. I guess I can't call all in favor, can I?
Hammond.
I
Aye.
have to speed
Malero.
things along. It was
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
this business of the mayor, you know. So next is a proclamation for National Historic Preservation Month. We have a representative from that committee.
Good evening, Mark Wicks, representing the Historic Preservation Commission, and all my friends behind me. So, this is the 2019 marks the 53rd anniversary of the National Historic Preservation Act. Charles City Historic Preservation Commission was established in 1994 with the mission to promote and safeguard our city's historical and architectural heritage through education and leadership. We are asking that the city, by proclamation, declare this as National Historic Preservation Month.
Questions for Mark?
Is the committee doing anything special this month? Mark?
They're working on, the railroad depot's on kind of at the forefront right now, trying to save the old historic railroad depot. So we have a couple commission members working on doing something we're going to talk to the paper about trying to run some kind of trivia information, trivia questions regarding Charles City's railroad history. A lot of people don't realize that we've got two old former railroad depots in town. The one that's in question there, right by the tracks, which has to be moved because of insurance purposes, and then Stacy and Stacy Ackerson purchased the former railroad depot for another railroad. Canadian Pacific owns the one by the tracks right now.
How's that fundraising going on that one?
I just talked to Bob, and he says they're a little over 13,000 right now, so they got a ways to go. But at the same time, the railroad's working with them on that, so they're not pounding on the door saying you have to have a decision here in the next couple months.
Good.
Any further comments or questions for Mark?
So move.
Second.
Thank you.
Clerk will call the roll.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Proclamation for National Historic Preservation Month is passed. Next is a proclamation for Older Americans Month.
Just for Friesman?
I don't think we have anybody here to represent this group, but
Oh, yeah, we do. We got somebody right over there.
Don't be kind now.
but I did go to the senior center last week. A couple representatives from Elder Bridge Agency on Aging were actually there to start this proclamation process, since that was May the 1st. And so I read the proclamation at the Senior Citizen Center the other day, and this is just kind of formalizing that proclamation. I told them that at one of our, I think it's the Rural Summit we went to, they called them active adults. They're not elder Americans, they're active adults.
You're assuming we're going to approve this.
I guess that's your prerogative, but if we don't, I'll have to go to the Senior Center again and undo it, I guess. So.
On behalf of Councilman Yeager, I'll move to approve.
Second.
Any further comments? I hate
Am I
to
too
ask.
old?
Sort of.
Yeah, you're opening
Am I
it.
too old to vote on this?
Clerk will call the roll.
Thank you.
Please.
Yes, Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
All right, well, why don't I come down and we'll read the two, and then I'll come back and read the third one up here.
Just get Yeager to go down there with you.
I should be thankful. I thought you guys were going to say me.
No, we've got you in mind for other things.
I bet you do. Oh, goodness.
All right, well, whereas America is the land of freedom, preserved and protected willingly and freely by citizen soldiers, and whereas millions who have answered the call to arms have died on the field of battle, and whereas a nation at peace must be reminded of the price of war and the debt owed to those who have died in war, and whereas the red poppy has been designated as a symbol of sacrifice of lives in all wars, and whereas the American Legion Auxiliary has pledged to remind America annually of this debt through the distribution of the memorial flower, now therefore I, Dean Andrews, Mayor of Charles City, Iowa, do hereby proclaim Friday, May 24th, 2019 as Poppy Day in Charles City, and ask that all citizens pay tribute to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the name of freedom by wearing the red memorial poppy on this day. In testimony whereof I have hereunto subscribed my name this 6th day of May 2019. And so it's nice to be reminded, a lot of times we do forget all the people who have paid a price to give us our freedom, and so it's nice to be reminded of this periodically, and you guys are doing a great job and have, as we asked before, you've been doing for many years and have continued to do a great job, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I say. Next is National Historic Preservation Month, and Mark and his colleagues were much more wordy than the poppy ladies were. Whereas preservation of our historic, you can come on up, Mark. Huh?
You need to hold for you, or you know that?
I'm good. Whereas preservation of our historic buildings and sites is a proven economic development tool that creates jobs, attracts investment, realizes downtowns and neighborhoods, stimulates heritage tourism, fosters new business development, assists affordable housing, increases property values, and improves the economic climate of communities. And whereas 2019 marks the 53rd anniversary of the National Historic Preservation Act, which established federal historic preservation policy and the framework for the Iowa legislature to create the State Historic Preservation Office, setting up a successful partnership between federal, state, and local governments. And whereas the State Historic Preservation Office is responsible for the identification, protection, and preservation of archaeological sites and historic and cultural resources throughout the state of Iowa, in partnership with elected officials, community leaders, advocates, nonprofit organizations, and interested citizens. And whereas the Charles City Historic Preservation Commission was established in 1994 with the mission to promote and safeguard our city's historical and architectural heritage through education and leadership. And whereas National Historic Preservation Month is observed annually in May, and whereas historic preservation is relevant for communities across the nation, both urban and rural, and for Americans of all ages, all walks of life, and all ethnic backgrounds. And because of the wealth of Iowa's historic buildings, sites, structures, and places, it is important that the citizens of Charles City and the state of Iowa recognize and value this heritage. Now, therefore, I, Dean Andrews, Mayor of Charles City, do hereby proclaim May 2019 as Historic Preservation Month in Charles City, Iowa, and encourage all citizens to celebrate our city's heritage and work toward preserving it for future generations. Signed and dated this 6th day of May 2019. So we do appreciate all that the Historic Preservation Commission does. Sometimes, again, just like I say, we sometimes forget all those people who have died in previous wars. We sometimes forget the heritage that got Charles City to what it is today. So we appreciate the work that you guys do to promote that. And as I mentioned here, this is for all ages, and we'll be talking later about adding some younger ages to that group to preserve that heritage ongoing. So thank you very much, Mark, for what you do, and I'll give you that. And thank you.
We'll talk to the state.
Yeah.
That was really long, wasn't it?
All right, well, then I'll read the Older Americans Month proclamation. Whereas the Elderbridge Agency on Aging includes a growing number of older Americans who enrich our community through their diverse life experiences, and whereas Elderbridge Agency on Aging is committed to strengthening our community by connecting with and supporting older adults, their families, and caregivers, and acknowledging their many valuable contributions to society. And whereas Elderbridge Agency on Aging recognizes the importance of bringing together all generations and engaging in activities that promote physical, mental, and emotional well-being for the benefit of all. And whereas Elderbridge Agency on Aging can enhance the lives of older Americans in our community by promoting home and community-based services that support independent living, involving older adults in community events and other activities, and providing opportunities for older adults to work, volunteer, learn, lead, and mentor. Now, therefore, we of Charles City, Iowa, do hereby proclaim May 2019 to be Older Americans Month. We urge every resident to take time during this month to recognize older adults and the people who serve them as essential and valuable members of our community. Dated this 6th day of May 2019. And when I read this proclamation at the Senior Center, I told them about how we are in the process of applying with ARP to be a livable community, and so the two kind of fit right together. And the Elderbridge ladies that were there were very excited about that and willing to provide us any support that they can as we move forward on the livable communities. I said I don't know exactly what it's going to entail, but we certainly will involve them in as that process moves forward also. All right, then I have reappointment to the Board of Adjustment, Pam Derwachter. Pam works over at Nyack Center here. If you know, Pam has been on the commission, and she was certainly happy to re-up for that position, and so I would like to appoint her to the Board of Adjustment.
And so move.
Second.
Thank her for being willing to serve.
Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
And the other appointment to the Civil Service Commission, I've been trying for several days to get a hold of that member and still have not, so we'll probably postpone that to the next meeting, and because I don't know if she's still interested or if we need to find someone else, but I would hopefully have that for our next meeting.
Okay, try again.
And just one other thing, I did go to the middle school today for the presentation of the governor here for Logan's Law. Chief was there, and it was a very good program, well done by the students that kind of led the process today, and certainly is always nice when the governor can come to town, and there's a good turnout, obviously, of students there, but of community members also, so it was a really good day for Charles City and the Luft family. I think they were very happy with the way things turned out, and I heard them on the news tonight saying it's kind of, they've finally crossed the finish line, they say, of trying to get this law passed, so it was a good program today. All right, well then next we will have a public hearing on the SRF loan for Water Reclamation Recovery Facility Project. We'll open the hearing. Do we have a filing of affidavit or of publication?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any written comments or objections?
None, Your Honor.
Any oral comments or objections tonight?
Move to close.
Second.
Move to close the hearing. The clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Do I have any comments on this one?
Yes, we will be holding this hearing again here in the future, near future. We would have had a presentation on this from Fox Engineering and the SRF, on the SRF process, but we are doing additional work in identifying borrow areas for fill and whatnot, both on-site, and due to that additional work that we're doing with that, there's additional review that the DNR then has to do, and they weren't ready then to meet tonight because they need to hear back from various groups. So we're going to be publishing this again here in the next couple weeks, we hope, and then holding a meeting probably in early to late June. This would be late June possibly, or early July. We have to have a 30-day window. So we will be doing this again, and we'll actually have a presentation, but they weren't quite ready yet. So.
All right. So we'll move right on then to Resolution 5819, which is approving a parking lot paving waiver request.
Yes, we discussed this at the last planning session. Hop Storage, they've purchased many of the storage facilities in town, including the storage facility built by Carr Properties out on Valley Avenue on the east side of town. Now, Carr Properties built that storage facility in 2015, and at that time they requested a waiver of the parking requirements for that initial construction. Hop Storage, they're planning on building a 40 by 50 building to the west, and they've requested the same waiver that was granted to Carr Properties 4 years ago. The Planning and Zoning Commission, they did review this, and they're recommending that the waiver is accepted with the addition of a 6-foot wide concrete apron in front of the storage unit doors. Also, this construction will include site lighting or exterior lighting. So we'd recommend approval of Resolution 58-19, approving the parking waivers recommended by the Planning and Zoning.
Any questions for John?
John, this would be very similar to what they have on their other unit out there.
Yes.
Have we had any feedback from anybody else in the industrial park on that?
No.
I would
not
so
heard
move.
anything.
Second.
Any other questions or comments, anyone?
I say as it mentions, and I think it's in the application that says that as people are driving in, they're using the concrete as a driveway anyways. I mean, there's minimal impact. I think it'd be a fit for that area with minimal impact around.
Any other questions? Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Resolution 5819 is approved. Next, we're going to consider a motion approving our insurance renewal package. Bob, going to take over.
Good evening, Council. Bob Ingram with Sisson and Associates to continue our discussion on some coverages that we discussed at the prior workshop, and then ask for the approval for the invoices for the Employers Mutual Insurance Policy renewal for 2019-2020. The pollution coverage that we discussed at the workshop for swimming pools, the liability limits of $1 million with per occurrence with $1 million aggregate, annual premium of $200. There's another endorsement that EMC offers that would cover other pollution outside of the swimming pool that would give you $250,000 per occurrence with $1 million deductible, and that annual premium is $250. So my recommendation to council, if you buy the one, buy the other. Questions?
What about your recommendation on the deductible then?
That's the next one coming up. You want to go right on down the line?
Do we need to approve these things one at a time, or can we approve all the recommendations
Approve all of them.
as a group?
I guess it would probably be have to be in the motion, Brad?
Yeah, I
For
think
which
we can
ones
just
to
have
do?
one motion with whatever additions we want, and
Okay.
then with the deductible that.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on down to the deductible. As per Councilman Starr's request on the deductible, whether it's a per occurrence or per building, our deductible is a per occurrence, not per building. So if you raise your deductible from $1,000 to $2,500, you'll save $5,672 a year. If you raise it to $5,000, it will save $10,833 a year.
Okay. Are there any other, those are the two main options that we still had to decide.
Those were the
weren't they?
two viable options, Mayor. I mean, the discussion last at the workshop was, what if we went to a $10,000 deductible on the property? The savings, I don't think, would warrant that. I think your better buys would either be the $2,500 or the $5,000 deductible.
Okay.
And then lastly, the approval for the invoices for the insurance package renewal with Employers Mutual.
So do you have any discussion on the optional options?
I think the $5,000 deductible would be good.
I think that'd be the way to go as well. And I think the pollution deal would be best to spend the $250 instead of the $200. Get
So
the
the
additional coverage.
The 250 includes both items.
250 is separate. So if you add the 200 for the swimming pool, the other endorsement is 250.
Okay.
So it'd be
Sorry.
450
Sorry.
for the two. I just think it'd be well worth the city's council decision to buy that.
I feel kind of strongly on that too, because the other items actually is where we may have the most issue with a leaky gas tank or something.
Could be anything.
Yep, could be a lot of stuff, but it'd
Actually,
be nice to have that
the
covered.
swimming pool pollution coverage is probably the more prevalent one, given all the chemicals and everything that that pool has. But the other pollution coverage of the $250,000 could be anything. It could be oil, gas, you name it. Anything that's considered a pollutant.
We got a lot of cars and a lot of units traveling around, so.
On the document that we've got included in our packet about for 2019, the grand total of the premium, that wouldn't have these changes included,
No,
right?
what we would do, Councilman, is we would go ahead and approve the invoices that I have submitted, and then after the changes are made, then we would make any corrections as far as return premium.
Okay.
Does the administration have any recommendations on the deductibles?
I think the 5,000 makes a lot of sense. Or I mean, going to a, $5,000 deductible makes a lot of sense for the $10,008 that we'd be saving.
Based on that, I would like to make a motion that we approve this with the $5,000 deductible change, and we pick up both of the pollution policies, so the
Second.
group.
Any further questions for Bob or anyone?
Thank you for all the time at the workshop the other night.
Oh, I thank
Going through
council.
this
We
stuff.
thank you for your business and your continued support.
Don't say it till we vote.
All right.
Clerk will call the roll.
The sassy group. Valero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Thanks, Mayor. I was trying to think, I watched Perry Mason a lot, I'm thinking, how would Perry handle this?
It's
Thank you.
best to just be quiet.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
All right. Next is first reading of ordinance 1130, which is changing parking requirements. First off, do we have a recommendation from planning and zoning, John?
Yes, we do.
And you might explain what we're talking about here also?
Sure. Well, first, the recommendation from planning and zoning was to recommending approval, and it was a 4-to-1 vote. One voted against it. What ordinance 1130 really entails, we had been looking at amending, especially the design standards, but then when we met with the developer there at the 500 North Grand building, we looked at some other items. First off would be the use of the right-of-way for parking, and what we're looking at is amending that and adding the ability to do that on a case-by-case basis, only for housing redevelopment projects where there's not available, parking available on site, where there's limited site space. And that would, like I said, that'd be on a case-by-case basis, and it'd be on for low-volume roads. Then looking at Section 7, which has the design standards. This section, really the current ordinance is rather restrictive. It dictates paving thicknesses, as well as there's quite a few items, subsections on lighting. And what we were looking at is changing that to requiring paving, but leaving thickness alone, letting the developer business work with the contractor engineer to come up with a thickness that works for them. And and then there was some discussion on, well, are there some areas in town where we want to, though, still have paved parking? Because in other areas where we're still looking at dust-free surfacing, so requiring asphalt, concrete, or the use of asphalt millings. But there's some areas that was discussed that there's still areas that would not want to use asphalt milling. So there's a color map in front of you, and what that is, what we tied it to was the federal functional classification of the roads, where it's arterials, minor arterials, and what we looked at was on streets where there's arterials and minor arterials still requiring paving. And on the map, those are the streets that are green and red in color, like Highway 18, Highway 14, Main Street, Gilbert Street, North Grand, E Street, and Clark Street. Those streets that are green, we would still require either concrete or asphalt. And like I mentioned, there's quite a few sections on lighting, and we're actually deleting those. There are a number of sections like on wattage of bulbs, fixtures, and amount of lumens. And what we're doing is replacing that, just saying lighting, illuminate off-street parking areas, and range it so that it's arrange the lighting so it reflects away from adjoining our districts, residential districts. Lastly, before I move on, what we're looking at is changing the design standards to make it a little bit more less restrictive, a little bit user-friendly, so that trying to, in the hopes of eliminating all the waiver requests that we've been receiving lately. Lastly is amending a number of parking stalls for multifamily dwellings. Currently, we require 2 stalls per dwelling, along with 1 stall for every 5 units for visitors, so 2.2 stalls per dwelling. Checking around the area, we require more than other communities, so we're recommending that we go to 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit. And that really covers those changes, and like I said, that came with a recommendation of a 4-to-1 vote from the Planning and Zoning Commission. And if we move forward, we're recommending the first reading as well as setting a public hearing on this.
Is the number of parking spaces, that something that we're looking at beyond just housing developments, or is this just strictly like, this really is only beneficial for this this type of item?
At this point in time, we're just looking at multifamily. Our plan too is to look at the entire ordinance, and at that time we'll address all the uses.
Gotcha.
Further questions? So in a situation like this, with this diagonal off-street parking, who's responsible for the maintenance of that? Is that public parking spots, or how does that work?
Well, yes, it'd be public park, I mean, it'd be in the right-of-way. I guess I would tend to think that it would not be a city responsibility, though. It'd be the,
So can that be signed as resident parking only? I mean, to meet his, because part of the reason we're doing this is to meet that 1.5 spots per unit. This kind of helps him meet that requirement in this situation, but I guess I think I may have brought that before. If this is public parking, does that meet that criteria, or can he sign it as private parking to help meet that criteria, or how does that work?
well, I know in other communities they do that, but it'd be based on like a lease.
Okay, so he could lease those spots, so they wouldn't be actually public parking, like the neighbors across the street couldn't park there.
And one of the things in this ordinance is it does give John the discretion to decide that on a case-by-case basis. So John, the engineer, could impose some additional restrictions or requirements in approving the use of that off-street parking.
Yeah, and this ordinance does it. Like the paving would have to meet SUDAS requirements, so it'd be paved similar to street paving.
And this expense for the paving would be at the property owner's expense, not the city's.
Correct, yes.
As well as maintenance.
And part of the requirement too is if they do have to relocate the sidewalk, if there's not enough space, if they'd have to relocate the sidewalk, then they'd have to provide a sidewalk easement if it had to be relocated and pushed back onto private property.
And on the 5th Street side, if he puts it on the back side of the sidewalk, it kind of alleviates all of this, right? It's totally his deal. He can
That's
kind of
correct,
do whatever he
because
wants.
that would be back on private property. It'd be
Right.
like any other private
Which
parking
is
lot.
kind of what I got the impression most people were in favor of at that meeting.
It takes the city out of it.
Well, it's
Well,
better for
Makes
the
it have to
flow
get
and
involved, too.
everything.
And I think, like in this particular instance at the old middle school, is I think the developer had referenced, it was either Fort Dodge or one of those other communities, they leased parking spaces as well for a similar situation.
So what, by this first reading, what we're doing tonight is approving the ability to allow the off-street parking, but still working with the developer at the 500 North Grand. He may or may not do this depending on what discussion we have with him. If it would be preferable to have that totally off-street rather than diagonal parking on the right-of-way, that may be an option, but this just provides that option citywide, correct?
Yeah, well, this would be citywide, but and that's why we looked at it too. It's limited in scope.
And it is only limited to redevelopment housing project,
Yeah,
so.
redevelopment housing projects where there's limited on-site space. So it wouldn't be set up for businesses or for example, like new apartment complexes that are being built new. It's just for redevelopment.
Further questions?
I would so move, Your Honor.
Second.
Anything else discussion-wise? Clerk will call the roll.
Star.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
So we will have the first reading of ordinance 1130.
An ordinance amending Section 22 off-street loading and parking of the Charles City zoning ordinance to modify off-street parking requirements.
And then we need resolution 5919, which is setting the public hearing date on this ordinance. And that would be
For May 20th.
May 20th.
So move, Your Honor.
Second.
Any further discussion on that? Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Star.
Aye.
All right, so we'll have the public hearing and the second reading on May the 20th.
Just one quick
Yep.
question for John. Will all the people in that neighborhood be specifically notified of these potential changes up there?
No, for changes to the ordinance like this is citywide, so we don't do it's not like a rezoning where you do it within 200 feet.
Okay.
There was a, P&Z they did publish notice and have a public hearing also before
Yeah.
they made their recommendation, and then there'll be a second notice published, so there will be
Yeah.
two
Okay.
publications in the press, but there's no requirement of, like John said, of notifying surrounding property owners.
Okay. But I would hope that those people pay attention to this whole process, and if they have any comments, that they bring them to the
Yeah.
fore.
Yep. That's why we have the three readings, but like you say, hopefully,
Once the parking lot's
people are paying
complete,
attention.
they'll see it when the parking lot's complete.
Yeah.
Let's hope not.
Usually the way it works.
All right. Move on to boiler maintenance, Heidi.
Heidi Nielsen, the Housing Director. Right now, we're planning on performing routine maintenance on the boilers at South Cedar Terrace. And we currently are in a contract with Linderman Heating and Air for performing all of our maintenance. They have provided us with an estimate of $16,288.40 for the maintenance. And part of that includes removing the sight glasses and installing a shut-off valve for each one of the apartments. The Housing Board is recommending approval of the maintenance with Linderman's, and we're planning on funding the project out of our operating budget.
Any questions for Heidi? And this was kind of a revised plan when the cost to replace everything came in a little higher than 16,000.
Quite a bit higher, yeah.
It really wasn't going to gain you a whole lot the way it sounds. So. I'd some.
Second.
Makes sense to me.
Any further comments, questions? Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Star. Yeager.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie.
Next is consideration of Resolution 6119, setting the public hearing for the fiscal year 19 budget amendment. Discussion for this one.
Give me a second. Trying
Yep.
to catch up here.
This is one we talked about at a workshop a while ago. It seems like it's been a month ago. I thought we'd already passed this, but that was a long time between that last workshop.
That fifth Monday throws you off.
Uh-huh.
In your packet, I included, it shows a little more breakdown on the different functions. I made the changes we talked about at the planning session, and so those are all included in this. State requires that anytime you go over a function, you need to do an amendment. So you can see that some of these actually went down, they decreased, but because we went over on at least one function, we still have to do an amendment. And they don't care about revenue. They just care about the expenses. So That's the information I've given you. I did have time today to actually input this information into the actual public notice, and I do have that in front of you, but it's basically the same information, but just put in that form that will get published. It's a 10 and 20-day publication, so we can hold the hearing on May 20th. These have to be submitted to the state by May 31st. Most of the reasons, the big reasons for the amendment are the Charlie Western Trail, the demo and the design work for that. We had some changes in some timelines of projects. The big one was the wastewater, excuse me, the wastewater plant. What else here? Snow removal cost. As you all know, it was a tough year, so that was a little bit higher than what we thought. And adding the city-operated transit. We did not have that budgeted because we really didn't know that was going to happen. So those are the main reasons for the amendments. I don't know if you have any other questions at all, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
And as you said in your summary, these amendments don't change the tax rate of
Correct.
what people know about, so this will have no effect on that
Yep, for this year, those are all
this
set.
year. Yep.
Yep, very good point. Thank you, Mayor.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion, questions? Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Next is consideration of Resolution 6219, which would be setting a public hearing on a proposed stormwater easement to Immaculate Conception Church. Discussion.
Well, I see Church, they're working to improve drainage up by the church building. And in order to do that, they need to extend storm sewer between the church building and the storm sewer system on Brandingham. Now, there's actually a city-owned parcel between the church property and Brandingham, so what they are asking for is a permanent easement so that they can construct the storm sewer through the city property. This will be a permanent easement, so we do need to have a public hearing on this, and that's what the Resolution 62-19 is. It sets the public hearing at 6 p.m. on May 20th.
Comments on this one?
So they're just going across the city property and hooking into that intake right there. They don't have to go under the road. There's already pipe under the road.
Correct. There's an existing intake as part of the highway, and they'll just connect to the back of that. They'll have to work with the DOT as far as permits for that.
Makes sense to me. I'll move to approve.
Second.
And this improvement would all be at the church's expense.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? Clerk will call the roll.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
And you said that would be the May 20th meeting also for that public hearing?
Correct. Yes.
Next is consider Resolution 6319, providing for reduction of interest rates. That's always a good thing.
Yeah, well, we figured out how to, we've refinanced a number of loans over the years due to decreasing interest rates, but haven't been able to do that with the states. We finally figured out how to do that. You wait for the letter that they send you that says they're going to lower the interest rate. So yeah, great news. We had an interest rate of 3% on our drinking water plant when we did that several years ago, and that was 3% at the time, and so now it's being lowered to 1.75%, which is the current rate, and which will be a similar rate we're looking at for the wastewater plant. But this one here, you can see, and here's the letter from Executive Director Debbie Durham. Kind of explains it, and then a schedule that shows you the differences between current and the new debt schedule. And by doing this, over the next, I think it's 10, 11 years we have left, we're going to save over $500,000. So $511,137 over the remainder of the term of that loan. So very, very, very beneficial. So just need a resolution to approve this if you wish to do so.
So move.
Any discussion on that one?
So move.
Well, getting good.
Get that one going.
Clerk will call the roll.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
We woke up in time to...
Talk about money there.
that letter actually came to my office, so I got to take it into Steve and say, hey, here's a good thing for today.
Yeah,
So-
that was pretty
Look
nice.
what I did, huh?
Yeah, look what I did, right.
Bob, a check from the state, basically. This is a good year.
Great leadership.
Next is consideration of the first reading of ordinance 1131, amending Chapter 28 of the Charles City Code of Ordinances by adding a new section to add student representatives to the Historical Preservation Commission. Discussion on that one.
He left.
I see Mark did not hang around. I can make a few comments, I guess, that the Historical Preservation Commission approached us about having student members, similar to what the Chamber does with their ambassador program, where they would hopefully have a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior members of the Historic Preservation Commission. These would be non-voting members. At one point, they wanted to have the senior be a voting member, but there was just some complications in doing that. This would be open to people who live in the Charles City School District, but going to any school, whether they go to the Charles City Public Schools, whether they go to the Gospel Lighthouse, whether they're homeschooled, they just have to live in the district. And they're for one-year terms, but it can be appointed, or the student can be reappointed each year. So again, hopefully they'll have one from each class. The class that kind of got this started are juniors, if I'm correct, I think this year. 8th grader, ninth,
I think that's
sophomores, I think maybe actually, because they were 8th graders when they did that. Anyway, so that would be the class. The top class would be that class that kind of worked with the cemetery and got that project going, and then they're, like I say, they will appoint one from each class. So, yeah, I think it's something like we read in our proclamation. It's good to preserve our history, and it's good to include our youth in the recognition of the history of their hometown. So, we need a first reading.
I would move for a first reading, Your Honor.
Second.
Is that you, Delane, that
Yep.
said that? Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
That's a neat deal. Get some kids involved.
Yeah.
I think so too.
This is a program that's, a similar program has been run around the state and from what I understand across the country, that I'd hope to see this expand to beyond this one group, and in the future to, at some point, also include the council having a student liaison as well. So I think this is a very beginning of a fruitful relationship with the youth of our community, and hope to see it really works out well.
Good. Any other comments? Clerk will call the roll.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
And we will have the first reading of ordinance 1131.
Ordinance number 1131, an ordinance amending Chapter 28 of the Charles City Code of Ordinances by adding a new section, 28.05, relating to the student representatives on the Historical Preservation Commission.
Thank you. Next is consideration of Resolution 6419, approving additional design fees for the South Main Street HMA project.
Okay, well, SEH engineers, they did the design work for the SWAP project. That's the asphalt overlay project on North Jackson as well as South Main Street. And their design agreement was actually approved by the council in October of 2017. Last summer, we held a public forum, like we called it, a public stormwater forum, and listened on different issues around the city that has been affecting residents. And one of those items was the intersection of South Johnson and Oliver Streets. This area does drain. Eventually it drains down to Main Street. And so we looked at ways that what could help this, and one of those items was to actually take some of the stormwater away from this area, direct it to the south to the larger storm sewer that parallels the Charlie Western Trail. Now, at the time, the overlay plans were nearly complete, and so that required SEH to come back, get more field work, revise the plans, and make those additions. Now, we were able to work through NICOG, and the construction work is covered with the SWAP funding. The additional storm sewer work is all covered. But so what SEH is requesting is an additional $9,600 to cover their extra cost to revise those plans. I feel it's legitimate, and that I'd recommend approval of Resolution 64-19.
Questions? Did you say the design work was also covered by the SWAP money?
No, design work is not covered by the SWAP. Actually, that's been a long time policy in NICOG. They have felt for, really since this whole policy started, that the money should go to the roads and not for design fees.
Further discussion or questions?
So move.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Friesman.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
All right, moving on then to Resolution 65-19, accepting deed for property.
Yep, so all the work has been done leading up to the point of acquiring the Outlot C area from Allied Land Development. And so tonight, to complete the transaction, we just need the council to pass Resolution 65-19, which would accept the deed to that Outlot C property.
You want to explain, Steve, about what the cost of this is, and so that we know that people don't think we're buying multi-$1,000 property? Well, we are buying it, but we're getting a good deal on it.
It's the area that was going to be the final area to develop for Allied Land Development, and we held a performance bond on the completion of a cul-de-sac off one of the short stub streets, and right now there's only one house built off of the main street on this secondary street. So really at this time there is no cul-de-sac need for a cul-de-sac to be installed there. Now if this gets further developed and we feel the need, to develop that and add several more houses, then a cul-de-sac would need to be installed. The cul-de-sac would then be at our cost to do so. Estimated cost of installing cul-de-sac is somewhere between $70,000 and $90,000, the way it sounds. But like we said, there's really no need to put it in now, and so having them install it now and then having to maintain it for no reason didn't seem like a viable option. And so, given the fact that we're not 100% sure how that property could be used, we thought by reaching out to and talking with Allied about if they'd be willing to gift it's approximately 8 acres, gift that property over to the city, we would release that performance bond on the cul-de-sac, and so that would relieve them from their obligation of having to install that, which is something we may or may not need. If we do need it, it's because we have additional housing and things going in there. So I think it's a really good deal. It works out well for both entities.
Good, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I'd so move.
Second.
Clerk will call the roll.
Hammond.
Aye.
Malero.
Aye.
Starr.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Friesman.
Aye.
All right, any miscellaneous correspondence tonight?
The one thing I do have is a letter from the chamber on our yearly parking lot cleaning. And I've asked Mayor Andrews to be the lead on this, so if you guys want to contact Mayor Andrews, let him know when you might be able to help out with this. They would like it to be done definitely before the 4th, and so actually that's the week before the 4th. They want us to kind of touch it up, but they want the first cleanup to happen from sometime the week of May 13th and then through May 24th, so that gives you a couple weeks, I guess. And then a follow-up cleaning the week before the 4th, and then the week of September 9th through the 13th. So there'll be 3 different JAGs. So if you guys want to contact the mayor, that would be great, and get something lined up. And then
How soon can you get that high school liaison in place?
There we go. So that's what I have for correspondence.
All right. How about any attorney's report, Brad, tonight?
None, Your Honor.
City clerk's report.
Next planning session will be May 15th, and this one is going to be the first of our traveling series. We're going to hold it out at Wildwood, mostly so we can razz Steve Lindeman one last time before he retires. So we're looking at having that out there. We're kind of wondering about a time to start that, because we talked about possibly doing a tour of the golf course. Our meetings normally start at 6. What time would you guys like to start that, to do the tour first before we come back to the clubhouse to hold the actual meeting?
So we are going to have the meeting there also.
Correct. That's the plan.
You said May 15th?
May 15th, yep, next Wednesday.
What time's happy hour?
Yeah.
Well, I think Steve is planning on maybe doing some burgers or stuff
Oh,
out
he
there.
is, okay, I wasn't sure if he had for sure decided. Okay.
Say that today, and just casually talking to him, you know, if anybody wanted to show up as early as 5 to go on like a golf cart tour or something, I mean, that'd probably be the earliest we'd want to do it, and not, you know, and not really sit down to have our meeting until maybe closer to 6. I mean, I guess quite a bit of time there, but whatever you, I mean, I don't think we want to sit down as a group and start having a discussion on anything until 6. I mean, Trudy would have to post it maybe as early as 5, just so people are aware, and we're not congregating and actually having a meeting at that point. But I don't, you know, I think they talked about one day, you know, maybe kind of do a tour of the course and get a feel for it and stuff like that. So,
Does anybody have a
I think Steve sounds
concern or
good.
time on for the time?
Okay, so I can put down, it'll start at 5, and if you guys just want to kind of wander in as you can and then do the tour, and then we'll kind of start the normal meeting at 6 in the clubhouse. Sound good? Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay, sounds good.
City,
That's all I had.
yeah, good. Thank you. City administrator's report.
Sure. Just wanted to update the council quick. I know last week we had, you know, with Simply Essentials, there was some concern over the smell that was kind of emanating from the plant or the adjacent area up there, and it seemed to last the better part of the week. Working with the leadership team over there, learned that their normal source for hauling out the waste product at the end, for whatever reason, that place was being closed or couldn't accept material anymore, and that was more towards the Clinton area. Since that time, they found another company to take the material in Minnesota, and so that's where the materials are being hauled now, and what was remaining over there got hauled out on early Friday morning, but up until that, it was getting quite pungent over there. And so, hoping to have further discussions with Simply Essentials on this, so that a backup plan is in place in case this spot doesn't work out or something, because it's something we got a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of comments from the public on, and justifiably so. It was really bad. So, something we're working on. Mayor and I might be having a meeting with them here, coming up here in the near future, to kind of discuss that further, but certainly something that's on the forefront of our mind. Park and Rec Director, so our interview team, which included 2 members of the Park and Rec board, well, 1 current, 1 past, along with our HR Director. We held interviews this last week, had 6 interviews, all very good interviews, so it's made the decision very difficult, but we hope to be making an offer here in the very near future, and we had a great candidate pool. We had about 48 total applications, narrowed that down to about 25, then ultimately down to 6 that we interviewed, and all 6 were very strong interviews, so we'll look to be filling that position in the near future. We also have some interest in the trees out at the wastewater treatment plant. You know, some of the trees that we acquired when we purchased that property. I've had 2 different individuals contact me about wanting to buy some of the trees, and so we're working on developing a policy that would allow to do that. Time is running short here in the spring to be able to do it, you know, this time of year. Otherwise, we're waiting until about October to do that. So we're crafting an agreement that we could possibly just, you know, if people are interested, buy trees, because there's about 5,500 trees out there that we could potentially sell. Some we'd like to reuse as part of the project, but some of them we could certainly sell. So that's something that's had some interest.
For the purpose of replanting or for the purpose of cutting down?
For the purpose of replanting.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about the smaller caliber trees, so, yeah.
See, spring and fall is kind of what I assumed, but I guess.
Yeah, but even the big trees, like the big trees that we just have to take down, we can't do those in the summertime either. We have to wait till winter because of protected species and things of that nature, so.
Is it the wood turtles again?
No turtles. This is
Turtles in
more-
those trees, huh?
These are more of those bats from Indiana. Indiana brown bat, which is an endangered species.
Wow.
Just an update on the certified site, property acquisition. I know Southwest TIF Committee has met a couple times here over the last few weeks. Has had a lot of discussion. A lot of that recent discussion has revolved around purchasing versus getting an option or just holding the option on the property. And so last Friday they met and ended up with a 2-2 recommendation on either buying it or or taking an option. So it's basically going to go to the Board of Supervisors with that for their consideration based on that information, and I guess we'll see where it goes from there. Ultimately, if the county decides not to purchase this property and just hold the option, that might be something that the council may want to consider if we want to go down that avenue and see about that. So that's kind of the real brief update on that. I mean, it's been a lot of details discussed through that, and so whether a long-term option is even viable or the preference and benefits of owning the property. So that's kind of the update with that. Transit service, we're looking to hire some sub-drivers. Our driving pool is full, but we still need sub-drivers, and so we're looking to advertise for that here in the coming week. Also have started renegotiation of the contract with Circle K. We had a 1-year deal, and so now we're looking to update that after about a year under our belt, so we'll be discussing that at an upcoming workshop. And then lastly, tomorrow afternoon I'll be leaving for the ICMA Regional Conference, which is in Evanston, Illinois. Pretty much all day Wednesday. I'm on the interview team to be interviewing the new Midwest Regional Rep for that, so we'll be doing that Wednesday, and then the rest of the conference later the week. So if you need me, I will not be here, but I'll be available as needed. And then the following week, Chief Anderson, myself, and maybe Mayor Andrews are going to be going down to the Nuisance Abatement Conference in Coralville. So see what some of the communities are doing in regards to nuisance abatement, see how we stack up, see what we can do differently, what things we can share. So that's all for me.
Right. And I will also be going to the Iowa Smart Conference on the day after the nuisance abatement conference. Or is it? No, that's this week.
That's this week.
Yeah. I knew I was going to be gone the same time you were, but
Yeah.
this week I'm going to be gone that you were, yes. Remind me on Thursday to go to Des Moines, would you, Delane?
You're on your own.
This week's the Smart Conference. Next week, the Not So Smart Conference.
Yeah.
You go to that one.
Oh, goodness.
Yes. Any board, commission, or committee reports tonight?
Just like Steve said with the Southwest TIF, there were a couple of different things that kind of came up in the last meeting. One was a comment by John Danos, who we had on the phone, who's with the bond council, about maybe an idea to fund that in kind of a unique manner, I guess, with the two different TIF districts. So I think we need to follow up on that and have some more discussion with him regarding that. And also I think that we should kind of think about, you know, the possibility that if the intent is to really to own that and not just wait on the option, you know, to look into the possibility of, you know, if that is something the city can, you know, can handle and work towards. So.
And I think it is. I mean, you know, the idea around the county handling it is they have much more debt capacity than we do. And we certainly have ample capacity. We're just a much smaller pool compared to the county. So it's going to be easier for them. But nonetheless, we could still do it and be well within our safe zone of our existing debt capacity to do it. So that certainly would be an option.
Any other comments of anyone? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
favor, say aye.
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 Meeting adjourned.